Welcome to Dirt, Sweat, and Gears, your weekly diary of despair. So last week we did some discovery and some teardown on the Prelude. I knew that I needed to do a couple of cooling lines and I had a couple of oil leaks. And that's really what we were investigating. And that kind of quickly took a turn for the worse. I am leaking oil from pretty much everywhere and leaking coolant from everything I didn't touch the last time I replaced the hoses, which is a lot. If you're familiar with the cooling system on the third generation Prelude, it is awful. Awful. It is awful. Last time I updated the hoses, about last year at some point, 2 years ago, I really only did the easy stuff. I did not think that I needed to do the hard stuff. And guess what? I was wrong. You definitely need to do all of the hoses when you replace the hoses. Fortunately, I am already kind of due for a timing belt, so with my water pump leaking, it's like, all right, I may as well. And that's kind of where the downward spiral started, was, oh, look, this is leaking too. I may as well. Oh, look, this is due to be replaced. Anyway, I may as well. So that ended up turning into me pretty much tearing down half the motor. Timing belt's gone. Everything below the intake manifold is gone except for the intermediate shaft. It's rough. And by the way, when you're leaking multiple fluids at the same time, you end up with just a greasy, disgusting mess at the bottom of your car. So that's something we're going to focus on this week. I've also got some polyurethane fill to fill my motor mounts and get a little bit of an upgrade in while we're doing this work. And fortunately for me, this is mostly all just labor intensive, and I know this car really well, so thankfully now I have a project that doesn't cost an ass load of money. I've got some really cool plans for these motor mounts. So I wanted to upgrade my motor mounts since I'm getting the driver's side and the passenger side transmission mount. I wanted to upgrade them to polyurethane, but there's a couple of reasons why I chose to buy stock motor mounts. The first reason being they're expensive, and my Jeep kind of drained all of my finances for the next month or so. So I really don't want to spend money unless I really need to. But also, the motor mounts that come from, for example, Innovative, the solid polyurethane motor mounts, they typically are a much harder polyurethane than I need. And that is because they're made more for high horsepower applications. Turbo, H22, that sort of thing. So if you're putting down 350, 400 horsepower, yeah, you want some stiff motor mounts. But this motor is pretty much never going to be much more than stock. So I really don't want to overbuild the motor mounts because you're sacrificing comfort, you're sacrificing drivability, and you're just making the car feel like a tin can piece of crap if you have too much vibration coming from your motor mounts. On the other hand, I do want some sort of an upgrade. I do want a little bit better traction if I decide to have some fun with it. And I just wanted the car to feel more alive. I want it to feel a little more spicy. So I bought a can of polyurethane filler. I bought specifically 60A polyurethane filler. Now, the motor mounts you get from Innovative or from these other kits, they're typically either 80 or 94, so they're much, much stiffer. 60, I think, will be a really good balance between comfort and performance, and also, it's a lot cheaper. It's only 35 bucks or something for the filler, and it's a DIY project. I like DIY projects. So I'm going to bring you on that journey once that arrives. I'm going to start with the brand new motor mounts because there will be nothing to clean. And then once those are in, I'll do the front and rear. The front and rear are actually what makes the most difference in these cars because it being a sideways mounted engine, the torque twist, it goes front and back. So that's going to be where it makes most of the difference. But on the sides here, I think it's going to help as well. I think the secret to success here with these polyurethane mounts is going to be that I am using new or very good mounts. While you can fill torn old-ass mounts like this, you're going to have a lot harder time lining up this hole. And also, I feel like I would much rather support the existing mount rather than rely entirely on the fill. Why? Because this thing is not attached. No! Oops, I just scratched the hell out of my car. That's cool. So I'm going to have a paint and bodywork video coming up in the next couple of years. So I just scratched the hell out of my car, and as you can see, this is not attached. So I really don't want to fill this because you're relying entirely on the fill rather than on the engine mount and the fill. So once that arrives, we'll get started on that project. In the meantime, we got plenty to do here. Let's get this apart. So while we wait on parts, there is plenty of cleanup to do. I do have the new oil pan gasket, and I should be receiving the oil pickup O-ring pretty soon. But let's just say that this is not a nice place to be. It's quite disgusting down here. So while I wait on parts, I'm going to clean up a little bit. It's not going to be show car quality, but I just... everything gets disgusting every time I touch this car. So I want to try to reduce that a little bit so that I don't feel like I need to take 50 showers every time I come out here. Up here you see that this junction, which is there, back there, and funny thing, the hoses with the clamps on them are the ones that are leaking. The hose that doesn't have a clamp is not leaking on either side. This drip here is coming from up above it from that hose I just disconnected. So I got to replace all of that rubber. That's the next thing I'm going to pull out. And then I got this guy over here, which is leaking from up there. And this one down here somewhere. The one that connects to this is also leaking. This one up here is also leaking. They're all leaking. This is the moment where I realize just how much work I've gotten myself into. Those power steering lines on that junction that I just showed you, yeah, they're all leaking, except for the one that goes into the secondary steering shaft. Amazing that that one without the clip isn't leaking. But there's two more underneath the intake manifold that I can't reach. I can't reach them. I have to pull the intake manifold in order to get to it. I should just pull the whole motor, but there's a problem with that, and that problem has nothing to do with my skill. It is because I don't have the hydraulic lift to pick up this engine, and I can't afford $250 to go buy one. An intake manifold gasket, that's a lot cheaper. I think I'm gonna have to pull the intake manifold so that I can get to those hoses, and then I won't have any more leaks in my power steering system. So that means I really need a bit of a morale boost. I need to feel like I have done something here because this hurts a lot. So I am going to try to put together the new timing belt, because if I can put the timing belt on and the sprocket and get everything, get the timing covers on and all that stuff without having to get in the way of anything else here. So if I get that done, it'll be a win, and I don't have to think about it anymore. Honestly, I'm so pissed off I don't even want to record. But I'm recording this because y'all need to know how terrible some of this stuff is. So, there's two power steering lines down there that are underneath the intake manifold between the manifold and the crossmember. I can't get my hands up there. There is literally no way I'm going to be able to replace those hoses with this intake manifold in the car. So that means I have to take the intake manifold off. I was hoping I could just pop the whole manifold off. You know, I'd have the vacuum lines and all the stuff sitting on the side. But no, I not only have to take the intake manifold off, but I have to rebuild the intake manifold because of that bolt right there. See that bolt? This one right here. This one right here. This bolts the fuel rail. Why do I have to take off the whole fuel rail? Well, because I can't get these off. These stupid fuel injector clips, I can't get them off without breaking the plastic. So I have to rip the whole fuel injectors, all of the fuel injectors out, which means I have to replace all of those seals too, which I shouldn't have to, but I do. I do now. Because I can't get them out without breaking the clip because, yeah, I broke the clip. So I need to get this out, and in order to get at this, I can't get this out of the way because it's held in with, what does that look like? A Phillips head screw. It's held in with a Phillips freaking screw. So I can't get this out of the way, the butterfly valve actuator, without taking out the entire butterfly valve. So now I need to get a whole intake rebuild kit. Thank you, Honda, for your brilliant engineering. Well, the intake manifold is off, and while I really am not happy about having to take it off, it does open up a lot of space behind it, and I can fix a lot more things, like, for example, the rat's nest. Yeah, that's pretty disgusting, and that would have been right where I need to put my hands, and I would have been underneath the car, and it would have fallen into my eyes. I don't want rat shit to fall into my eyes. So I'm actually kind of glad I did this because now I can clean that up, and I can do things like put a little spritz of paint on the brake booster down there. And that happened because the brake cylinder failed at some point, and I replaced it on the car. So this is actually kind of a good opportunity to clean up a lot of things and get a lot of things out of the way that pretty much never would have been done otherwise. I also have much better access to the water pipe that I am having a really hard time getting apart. Probably going to pull the water pump and see what I can do from the other side. I'm not sure if there's some kind of bracket holding it in or something, but there is definitely an O-ring that I need to change there. So my last video, I thought that I was done tearing down, and boy, I was wrong. Let's continue tearing down. So I put the oil pan on with the new gasket, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the process first. First of all, the reason why I didn't want to show you in a little bit more detail as I was doing it is because when you're working with gasket goop, the clock is ticking and your hands get really messy, so I just didn't want to deal with that. So first of all, when I do very important oil seals on my Honda, I always use Honda Bond. Now, this tube is probably more than 2/3 gone, so as you could tell, I have been using it, and I have to fix the cap a little bit. But I also like to have genuine Honda gaskets, but in this case, I didn't have one. This is what I got a long time ago, and I'm not sure why. You want to put some of the Honda Bond on both sides of the gasket. So first I put it on the pan itself. I wanted to make sure that I got coverage over the entire thing. And then I stuck the gasket on there as good as I could, and then I would smear some on the other side. It's really a thin coat on actually both sides, but the bottom side was a little bit thicker than the top. Let's get into the car and take a look at the oil. So as you see here, I have put a little bit of paint on the spots where I had put JB Weld. I don't really care. I didn't sand it. I just spritzed a little paint on it. No big deal. So for seating the pan itself, you really want to make sure you don't over torque it. And it looks like I may have given it a little bit of extra torque right here. Just a little bit. I'm not really worried about that. I put enough Honda Bond on either side that I don't think I am going to have a problem. I'll probably eat those words later. But the name of the game here is, again, don't over torque it. They say to tighten it wrist tight. There's actual inch-pounds spec that you can reference if you have that kind of equipment. I am a dumb ape. I don't have that sophisticated, fancy equipment. So I just tighten it just a little bit until it starts to snug. And the other thing you want to do is make sure you do it, one bolt here, one bolt there, another one over here. And you really want to spread out the seating of the pan so that it is as even as possible. And for the most part, except for this one spot, I seem to have been successful. And honestly, even in this one spot where it's sticking out a little, I've actually tightened it down farther than that and had it stick out farther and have driven the car for 10 years like that. So I think it's going to be fine. But right here, it's like, it looks really nice. It looks seated really nice here. And yeah, you want to tighten one corner and then do the opposite corner, kind of like a head gasket, because you really need to get this thing down even, and you really don't want to over torque it. This is a lot of work to do only to have it leak again. So you really want to use the best materials. You want to take your time, and you want to do the best that you can do. And by the way, get this thing as clean as possible before you put it back together. I got it mostly clean enough, but if I could do it again, I would have cleaned this side a little bit more thoroughly. As you can see, there's little bits of dirt right around the bolt holes. Some of that came through on the other side, so I had to kind of clean as I go. There were little chunks that I was kind of picking out of the Honda Bond as I was applying it. So now that the oil pan is on, I'm going to let it cure overnight before I start doing anything crazy with it. Tomorrow, I'll double check the torque on the bolts, and then I'll be able to put my motorcycle jack under it and relieve the motor mount so that I can start working on the timing belt. And here I have removed the back cover for the timing belt case, and I really want to get new seals for that thing. I actually don't know how I'm going to find that, but that's a problem for me when I go inside. Back here, I have cleaned out most of the crap, the rat crap, and it is looking much, much better. And I'll just keep cleaning it as I go. There's a couple of spots where I'll probably spray just a little bit of paint just to cover up some scratches. You can see I've got that weird, this right here, this hose right here, this is what I'm talking about when I say that the power steering line is really stupid. Because there was that junction that I removed here, went to a short line, went to that hard line wrapped around, went to another rubber line over there. Instead of just going through a rubber line from there to there, it makes this weird little loop for no apparent reason. And that's not even talking about the high pressure line, which starts here, ends there, but makes a lap around the engine for some ungodly reason. I really have no idea. This is the high pressure line. It ends down there. It could have just gone like that over the valve cover, but no, this is a Prelude. Why would it do that? Welcome to my office, where it's even more of a disaster than my garage. Why are we in my office? Well, funny story. About halfway through recording the progress on my engine last week, I accidentally pressed a little button that says mute. So I muted myself while I was recording, and apparently these things remember the setting, because the whole rest of the week I was muted. So I get several videos done, and the work can't be reshot. The work is done. So we have to come in here, and I'm going to just kind of guess at what I was talking about and try to narrate over you. But we have the water pipe here on my workbench Miata. I've cleaned it up, hit it with the wire wheel, and I have discovered quite a bit of corrosion on some of the little pipes, and it was actually very concerning. I had a little bit of hole. I don't know if you could see that. Maybe I'll point to it. Maybe I'll bring the camera over to it. But yeah, I ended up sending that off to the electrician that had rewired the house next door to me. The house next door to me that I also own. So I had him take care of it. He just returned it, and we'll be able to look at it just in a few minutes. I also got started on the timing belt. The timing belt was a huge pain in the butt because it's just it almost feels like it's too tight to get on there. But I had put the timing belt tensioner all the way out and then locked it in place so that it was as loose as possible, and got back there, and you can see I'm not quite done yet, but I had pulled all the components off, or put all the new components on, put the new front main seal in, put the sprocket on, got the cam gears on. And what am I doing here? This is how I found top dead center, actually. So I wanted to find top dead center on the first cylinder. I know it was pretty close because I could see the slot for the Woodruff key, but I wanted to be really, really sure. So I stuck that very small socket extension in there and would manually turn the crank a little bit back and forth, and I would watch the extension go up and down until I pretty much found the sweet spot. And when you do find the sweet spot, when your cam gears are lined up, you know that's going to work, because too far off in one way or another, and it will be very visibly out of time. So the cam gears themselves have these little slots on them that they're supposed to point towards each other. And there's also the arrows that say up, but it's actually not up, it's gangsta lean up. So it's up 15 degrees to the right. This sucks, because that's my harmonic balancer. At some point, I had damaged the harmonic balancer, and you can see here that it actually damaged the timing cover too. It wore a hole into it, and so now I got to try to repair that hole. And the other thing is, like, I really don't like that I had to remove material from the harmonic balancer. I feel like that's kind of like the point of it being a balancer, is that maybe I put it out of balance, but I don't like that hole. So I actually got some zip ties, and I started to melt pieces of the zip tie into that slot there so that I can try to rebuild it and kind of rescue that timing cover. It's not pretty, but it'll be functional. You know, I don't think I'll roll into a car show and people will say, "Oh, well, I was going to give you an award, but then I saw that timing belt cover and oh no, you're not going to win this car show because of that timing belt cover." No, that's not going to happen. This is where I pull the radiator. In fact, I made a big, huge mess because I forgot that the radiator was full of coolant. So I guess I get to use coolant to clean the floor of my garage. But that's okay. If it's going to go on the floor, I may as well mop it up. So I put the jack stands underneath the car, pulled the front and rear motor mounts. The front motor mount actually came out easier with the radiator out rather than taking the bracket off of the engine block, because one of the bolts on the engine block is actually seized, and I'm pointing it to it right now. That bolt right there, that bolt won't move. It will loosen a little bit, but it's just a matter of time before I just snap it. So I decided, hell with it, I'm going to leave it there, pull the radiator out, and then I was able to pull the motor mount out from the front of the car. So it's out now, and now I have a little bit more room to work with for that stupid hose that I'm procrastinating. So those are the existing motor mounts. Curious thing though, so that's the rear, and that one's in very good shape. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's you can see a little bit of wear, it has a little bit of age to it, but at the end of the day, I could totally reuse that. The front though, strangely enough, the front is actually torn. That connection point is completely gone. So I'm not terribly worried about it because the other connection point holds the bolt hole in place. So when I fill it with urethane, it'll just fill into that hole, and I'll be relying on urethane a little bit more than I wanted to, but at least that mount, I believe, is salvageable. So here I am preparing the motor mounts to be filled. So really all I did was wrap them in duct tape. This one, I also put some super glue along the edges of where I wanted the urethane to stop flowing, but I think a good sticky duct tape is going to be your best shot, honestly, because I use cheap duct tape because that's what I had. I hate that cheap duct tape. I can't wait for that roll to be over. But if you use a really good Gorilla Tape or something like that, you absolutely won't have a problem at all. And so I got that box and filled it with sand. I actually just had that sand laying around, and you put sand in it so that you can kind of prop up the low sides of the motor mount, and then the high sides you can sink down more. So that way you can get it nice and even. It doesn't need to be scientifically level. It just needs to be more or less even so that when you go to fill it with urethane, you're not going to just have half of it spill out. It's just like this glass with beer. You want it flat because the beer is the urethane's going to harden, and you don't want it to harden like that. You want it to harden like that. And with beer, you want to drink it. And also, the sand is a good place for, if you do have any spillover, it'll run off into the sand and not onto your workbench, through your workbench, and onto the engine head underneath your workbench. Ask me how I know. So here is the motor mounts with some fill. Now, one of the problems with the fill itself is that it hardens pretty fast, so you have to work fast. That's why you get the sandbox out. You do all the taping. You do all of the prep before you do the job, because when you pour that hardening compound into the mix, clock is ticking. You got 15 minutes. That's not enough time to say, uh-oh, I better go fix this. And it's definitely not a good situation if you make a mistake and you end up pouring urethane all over the place. You're done. So you pretty much have only one shot at it. If you don't want to ruin the motor mount, if you don't want to buy more urethane, we'll get to that in just a minute. But here I have filled it, and this is my first attempt at filling it. So basically I just dumped it in, stirred it up, and then poured it in. I'm going to let it sit overnight and see what I get. And then here is the next day, or either the next day or 2 days later. I'm inspecting the dried state of the urethane-filled motor mounts, and I'm not all that happy with it because they're very sticky, they're very goopy in some places, and it's like they hardened inconsistently. So I think what happened was I poured the mix in. I poured the hardener into the big bucket, and I think I didn't stir it enough. I thought I was probably kind of preoccupied with, first of all, the amount of time that I had to work with this stuff. But I poured it in, and I just think I didn't stir it. So you see here, it's like I'm touching it, and it's kind of slimy. It's really sticky, and even in some parts, I can kind of gouge it out. So, yeah, I need to reevaluate this. So that's it. I believe the rest of this video, we do have audio. So let's cut back to the action. I got the pipe back from my welder slash electrician, and it looks really good. So he repaired the smaller holes there, the smaller output hoses, and actually added material to them. And I also took it out to the wasteland and gave it some paint, so it looks nice and pretty. So now all I have to do is clean up these ports on the inside because I got a little bit of paint on them, and then this will be ready to go back on the car. Well, since my first pass didn't go as well as I wanted it to, I decided to buy more. I could have, if I were willing to wait a little bit longer, probably gotten a lesser quantity than this. This is still the smallest quantity that I could get from McMaster, and it was pretty much exactly what I used to get this far. So I'm going to have way more than I need, but whatever. They were close, which meant that they delivered quickly. So that means I'm able to get a YouTube video out for you guys. I just spent more than I wanted to. So let's get this thing open, and I'm going to try to do it right this time, and I'm also going to try to do it on camera. So last time, I'm pretty sure my mistake was that I didn't spend enough time mixing. So we're going to go ahead and try to spend enough time mixing. So all I have to do to activate this is pour this into that and stir it. But like I said, I think I didn't spend enough time stirring last time. So let's spend some extra time stirring. We're going to spend a good solid minute easily and make sure it's all in there. Okay. Because we have 15 minutes for this thing to set up. So let's spend one of those stirring. Okay, well, more audio trouble, this time because my little transmitter died. Thankfully, you didn't miss much because it went out while I was filling these motor mounts. This was, again, really easy. All you do is you pour it in and you wait. So there's really nothing left I can do here. I have a bunch extra. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm probably just going to let it harden inside this can. If you're smarter than me, you'll be able to do this in a single pass and spend a lot less money than me. I spent, I think it was $38 for the urethane itself, and then another $15 to get it here. So it was about $50 out the door. I spent $50 twice, but you can spend $50 once, be smarter than me, and get these filled. There is enough in the smallest mixture to fill all of these mounts. So you don't need a whole lot. You just need one of these, pour it all in, and if you did it right, you're going to have solid motor mounts. We're going to go ahead and call that a video. This has been, well, this has been just like any other day working on the Prelude. A constant uphill struggle. Even the audio didn't go well. But you know what? Once this car is back together, I freaking love driving it. This car is just a riot to drive. It is so much fun, and it is very reliable. This car has been through a whole lot, and it certainly deserves all of the work I'm doing to it. So whatever the car needs, the car will get. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Next week, hopefully, we're going to get more of this car back together. If you like what you see, like, share, subscribe, comment. I especially want to know what you think of these filled motor mounts. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a really cool trick, a really great way to save money and get a little bit of performance, and just the right amount of stiffness that you need out of your motor mounts. If you don't like what you see, maybe you're some parts vendor that doesn't want people to know that they can do things themselves, also leave a comment. Either way, thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.